If you're considering buying a Logitech G29 or a Logitech G920, then maybe you should consider this. This is the Thrustmaster T248. It's a force feedback steering wheel, kind of meant to compete with the Logitech G29. Now, initially when this thing launched, it was actually significantly more expensive than a Logitech G29, but after Thrustmaster did some sales, I was actually able to pick this up for the exact same price as a new G29. So in my country, that was about 6 grand. Now let's talk about the design. So just like the Logitech G29, it's obviously on the smaller side compared to real life steering wheels, as well as more expensive models. It's got about a 28 centimeter diameter, so that's about the same size as an iPad, if you're interested in that. So however, unlike the Logitech G29, this one uses a lot of plastic in its design. While the G29, for example, had a metal spokes, I think it's called, and a lot of leather, this one has mostly plastic. Just about everything you see here is made out of plastic, and there's some leather around the outside, but to be honest, I'm not really a fan of it. It feels very cheap compared to like leather, real leather that you'd find in like a car or something. In terms of torque, this thing produces around 3.5 Newton meters of torque, which is about 40% more than what the G29 does, with the G29 only having about 2.5 Newton meters. So in terms of overall strength of the force feedback system, this one is significantly better than what you get on the G29. However, one thing I've seen some other reviewers complain about is the fact that when it comes to drifting, the G29 actually gives you a better experience due to the better centering that it has. Now let's take a closer look at the buttons. So just like with what happens with the G29 and the G920, where the Xbox version has fewer buttons, it's kind of the same here as well. So what you'll find is that with the PlayStation version, you'll have, I think, what's called L2, L3, somewhere here. But with this one, you just get the share buttons. But obviously if you're on PC, these buttons work and you can map them to whatever you want. This is not a button, it's just a logo. So of course you got the D-pad over here, which feels quite cheap and very, like, you can tell this is a cheap wheel whenever you use this D-pad. But these buttons feel fine, and feel fine. I have no real complaints with these ones. And of course you got the view and the menu buttons, which are needed for the Xbox, basically like the stop and select menu. And then of course you got the power button here. And then you have these shoulder buttons, which should work in-game. However, from my experience, I think the only game I've played that supports this is F122. As for every other game, doesn't really support it. Obviously, this is a significantly newer wheel. I do know Acero Corso Competizione supports it, but most games don't really support this, so just be aware of that. And then you've got these mode and display buttons, which are more specifically for the steering wheel itself. So if I go into F122, I can go ahead and show you what these do. Some games support this display. It does multiple things. Like right now you can see it doing, showing you the gear number. It also has other multiple functions. We'll go into that later. We can then come into this mode thing to access, for example, setting whether we're using this on a console or PC. We can set the level of force that we want to have directly from the wheel. There's about 5 bars, I think. Yeah, 6. There's 6 of them. There's about 6 settings that you can choose from. You can then also change the curve for the force feedback, whether you want a linear curve, which is FFB1, or you want a more exaggerated curve, for example, number 2 or number 3. I actually show that in the manual. You can see how this linear one, which is number 1, we have then the other more exaggerated ones that you can pick. Then you can also set your rotation directly from the steering wheel itself. You have auto, where it will basically work with the game to give you the setting that you need, or you can choose your own one with it, that be 270, 360, all the way up to 900 degrees, which is the maximum. It's a very nice feature to have, because now instead of having to go through tons of menus to change this setting, you can just do it from the wheel itself. Now, since I mostly play F1, it's not exactly something I have a lot of experience with, and whether or not it works well. Next, you have the pedals. You can choose whether using floor pedals or the inverted pedals. And then you can also check your temperature directly from the wheel itself. So that's actually a pretty cool feature. The hottest I've ever gotten it to be was about 87, but I haven't really gone beyond that. On average, with my play sessions where I'm about where I play for an hour or less, it never really goes above 70. It usually chills around the 60s most of the time. And you can also reset all the settings if you want. Then you just press mode again to leave the mode. Now we can take a look at all the display options that you get. So as far as I'm aware, there's only a couple of games that support this. I think WRC Generations There is F122, I think it's the Corsa Competizione, but it's a very small list since this wheel was released was it 2021, I think. So we'll see if there's more support added, but for now, there's not really much support. So you just press the display button once, and these two bars will light up on the side to tell you that you are changing the settings. So you can flip between multiple options. So for example, you can show your speed, as you can see, and it pretty much updates in real time. You can check your revs. You can check your position in the race. You can also check your laps. Then in terms of lap times, you can, for example, show your personal best. As you can see, 1 minute 30. There'll be some lights that show up at the top there. But obviously, because the lap I said was a 0.001, those lights don't show up. But we can then also check the rest. For example, our current lap. You can show your last lap as well. Let's say you're trying to lap at a specific pace for the whole race. Maybe this might be useful. And then we have the gear counter. And then in all of these modes, you will have the shift lights turn on. They are always there on at the bottom. As you can see them right there. Now, if I'm being honest, this thing is not really that useful because most of the time you're looking up here at the screen, and if you look down, it's very far away. With a normal dashboard in a real car, this thing would at least be like somewhere up here. So in most cases, this screen is pretty much useless. Maybe at night you might be able to see the flashing shift lights, but this thing is mostly useless. It's more like a cool gimmick, so don't buy it just because it has this cool screen. The biggest issue that you're gonna find with this steering wheel is going to be these pedal shifters. So let me just open up some menus, and they are really, really loud. Just listen up. Like, out of everything on the steering wheel, these pedal shifters are the loudest thing. In fact, they were annoyingly loud to the point where I tried to do a DIY solution. So I just took an old lace and I just put it between the pedals, so that's a bit quieter. So it's like a before, after. So that's something I highly recommend that you do. And then this thing also has a fan here at the top for temperatures. You can definitely hear the fan, but it's quite subtle. So it's not really going to be a disturbance for you. And the next thing we're going to talk about is the pedals. So as you can see, I've got something here. It's basically a brake because, as you can see, I'm on tile floors, so they will slide around. Same thing with like every other pedal, like for example the G29. They're just going to slide down unless you like hard mount them, so that's unfortunate. But you've got, these are the Thrustmaster T248 pedals. They're made fully out of plastic. All of it. So you've of course got a clutch pedal right here, you've got an accelerator, and you've got a brake. Now the cool thing about the brake is it's got a spring here, and you can replace it. They actually give you a harder spring if you want to use it right here, and also an Allen key if you want to move around the pedals, because these are the adjustable. You can see all these holes. You move them down, up, left, right to your preferences, which is a nice feature to have and something that you don't have with the G29. However, unlike the G29, you don't have the carpet grip at the bottom. So if you plan on using this on the carpet, then maybe instead get the G29. And as you can see, I've got this thing mounted on the disc. So far, I haven't had any problems at all with this thing. It's been rock solid on this disc. And the next thing here is back to the wheel. You got these things on the side here. These are called the encoders. So basically, you use this one on the left to switch between 4 different modes. It doesn't work on the Xbox, so I can't actually show you, but use this to switch between 4 different modes, and then use this thing to make those adjustments. For example, mode 1 could be brake bias, so you can switch to mode 1, and then use this to adjust your brake bias. Then mode 2 could be your differential, maybe you change that. Mode 3 maybe it's your traction control settings, and you get the point. So that's a cool feature to have. It also works on PC, but for Xbox, I don't think there's a game that supports it other than Assetto Corsa Competizione. That's the only game I know that supports it. And then in terms of force feedback, I'm not exactly an expert on this. However, coming from playing on a controller, I have to say there are some nice benefits with switching to a wheel. Like, it's much easier to catch slides with a steering wheel thanks to all the force feedback. However, you do lose out on the vibrating triggers that you got on the Xbox controller. So you don't really know when the brakes are locking up. It's kind of difficult to tell. And the same thing with wheel spin. It's difficult to catch wheel spin. And another thing as well is, I'm not sure if this is a Thrustmaster specific problem, like with the specific wheel, but I find it really difficult to know when exactly the car is losing traction. Like when the car starts to slide, it's kind of difficult to tell. It's very subtle. And here in F122, I've even got the understeer enhanced turned on, but it does not do anything. The same thing with the brakes. It's kind of difficult to tell when they're locking up. Just kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. So if you're looking for an alternative, this might actually be a great choice. However, just be aware that the Thrustmaster shifter is significantly more expensive compared to the Logitech one. However, Thrustmaster one you can use when you eventually upgrade to a better wheelbase, like for example the T300 or the TSXW or those kinds of ones. So if you're planning to upgrade quite soon, then maybe getting this one's better, because the shifters and the upgraded pedals you can use with other Thrustmaster wheels. However, with the Logitech, what you get with the Logitech G29, you're pretty much stuck with. So just be aware of that. But if you have any questions about this wheel, do let me know. I've also got an Amazon link in the description if you want to buy this and support the channel. Alright, thanks for watching.